So on this channel, we have navigated the idea of building a watch collection in a variety of different ways. We've done it through just general budget, but we've also done it through developing personas and then making really calculated picks around what are the right watches for each type of individual. Now today is going to be a spin-off of that, looking at how you can build a watch collection, or not even a watch collection. What is the right watch for different types of individuals, different personality traits, different type of lifestyles, kind of a offshoot of our occupations video, but more really down to the personality traits and how you would define that type of individual. Now this will be all in good fun. Now I just wanna say that up front. So if we're getting into some stereotypes, I understand. Nobody's safe here, including myself. So we're gonna go through a variety of different kind of personas. And then with that, go ahead and have accurate types of, I would say, recommendations for that one watch that would be a good fit for that certain type of person. So before we look at these different personas and dive through these different watches, recommend checking out one of our latest blogs, or updated blogs, looking at the top picks under $500 for 2022. I recommend checking that out. It's on teddybaldassarre.com and in the link in the description down below, looking at a variety of different watches. I think we have over 50 in that list. But now looking at our different personas, first we have the romantic, someone that values authenticity, tradition, and old-fashioned design and wishes they were born in a different era. Then you have the clubber, enjoys a good party and loves having some flash on the wrist. Then you have the meathead. It's all about lifting, meal plans, and macronutrients. They also have a pretty successful fitness Instagram account and will find any excuse to bring up CrossFit in the conversation. Then you have the hipster, is into watches that many have not heard of and gets just as much joy from someone who doesn't know what's on their wrist as their morning pour over. Then you have the Hypebeast. If it's popular on social media, this persona is there. Cares what celebs wear or anything hyped by the culture. Then you have stealth wealth, loves watches and can afford the good stuff, but would prefer if no one in the room noticed. Then you have I got a deal. Can't stop telling you about what incredible value their watch is and thinks every luxury brand is a ripoff. Stereotypically rich, doesn't care about watches but has money to spend. Student, loves watches and wants to be in the watch game, but funds are tight and student loans are mounting. And then you have the watch media pro blogger, writer, photographer, and media/YouTube. This group is out of touch with reality and enjoys wearing cardigans and turtlenecks a little bit too much. All right, so now to kick things off, let's look at the romantic category. If I've not mentioned it yet, I will specify that if it is appropriate, I will have a more affordable option and then more of a reach luxury option if it is appropriate. For some of these, it of course will not be, but to start us off with the romantic category, I think for the more affordable option here, I wanna look at the Orient Sun and Moon. Now the reason why I wanted to include this is because it has many of the characteristics that I would think somebody that has this more romantic traditional approach would enjoy. You also have an AM PM indicator, and for the price range, this is going to be one of the more tasteful executions of exactly that. It is not a moon phase, but something about just moon phase complications, it just exudes tradition and looking at a classic. This is a good one, around $200, $300, is going to be on the larger end of things for maybe that more traditional wearing experience. So that's probably the only thing I could dock it for when you're talking about this category, but otherwise it felt like a really good fit for someone that's on a budget but enjoys this type of watch. And now for our stretch pick here for the romantic category, you have the Vacheron Constantin Historique American 1921. Now to me, this fits it for a variety of reasons. For one, when looking at this category of traditional watchmaking, sure, there might be some unconventional choices here when you're talking about design, but when I think of Vacheron and the symbol of what the brand represents, I just commonly come back to looking at this design. This silhouette, the askew crown position, it all just comes together to really leave a lasting imprint on the brain when you put this thing on for the first time. It's class personified with a twist. If you look at those 1920s drive watches in the expanding US market, that really was the answer for this watch. And even though it might not be the most practical watch nowadays, for this type of romantic individual to tell that story, to speak to that type of era of the 1920s and the expansion of the roaring 20s of art and culture, and you're also getting a fantastic looking watch in the process. Those painted Arabic style numerals, and then also those breguet hands and the sub-seconds, which is off center, of course, just like the entire crown and watch as a whole. For our next category, we have the clubber. So this is somebody that wants something on the wrist that might have a little flash to it, can grab some attention. So I want to look at two different price categories here. I want the affordable option as well as the stretch option. Just because you don't have some money doesn't mean you can't have some fun and go out in the clubbing scene. So to start us out here, I think the most appropriate choice would be the Tissot PRX, but a newer variation, the all gold quartz option from the PRX family. To me, this really epitomizes, I think, the most flashy elements of the PRX coming in this gold PVD coated bracelet and kind of integrated design that I think makes it look way more flashy, will grab attention. If you look at this thing, I can just see a lot of people gravitating towards this watch. Now, would this be maybe the most popular PRX? No, but for $450, I think this kind of all gold format, it's gonna be as tasteful here as you're ever going to find, and you're also going to get a watch that, like we've mentioned many times with the PRX, is well done for the money, no question about it. Now for the stretch pick, I have the AP Royal Oak. I was on the fence about either Royal Oak or going for the Hublot Big Bang, but I think AP Royal Oak just made a little bit more sense because it's been out for longer. It seemed like the first of this type of style and genre, and I think you have to give it nods for that. And we're talking about 50-year anniversary of the AP Royal Oak this year, so it wins in that regard. But what more needs to be said about the AP Royal Oak family? I don't know if it's going to be out at this time, but I just recorded another video looking at the Royal Oak in 2022, looking at the 15400 and getting into, after 50 years, where does Royal Oak stand? And in terms of where it stands, it's still an icon of watchmaking, but I certainly would recommend checking out that video. If it's not out yet, it's all right. You can just be anticipating it very soon. But when it comes to the Royal Oak, it just defines this type of understated flash, but also flash at the same time. We're talking about just a traditional stainless steel watch at the end of the day, but that integrated bracelet, the way that they're able to forge that case with the elements of polishing between the links, as well as on the case with the brushed elements, the screws, and outside of maybe Panerai, as well as the Oyster case, I think it has one of the most recognizable silhouettes in watchmaking history. Now for our next category, we have the Meathead. And for our first option here, we have the Seiko Arnie SNJ025. Come on, I couldn't help myself. He's freaking Mr. Olympia, I had to do it. And also you do need probably some wrist curls if you're going to wear this watch. Although that might be putting this watch down because it is more wearable than it just appears with the dimension set of 48 millimeters or so and that lug to lug of around 50. But in reality, it's pretty much a circular watch all around. So the lug to lug doesn't overstretch. Even on my wrist, I didn't think it looked out of place. But there's too many connections here with Arnold Schwarzenegger that I had to include it on this type of list here and this type of affiliation. This watch is pretty much 80s sci-fi on the wrist with the Predator connection. You're also getting the kind of crown button layout and setting of the time with the analog digital display and watching the hands work with that digital display to be able to set the time. It's a lot of fun to watch the hands go into motion and jump into the right position after you set with that digital function. And definitely would recommend checking out my video reviewing that watch if you've not done so. And then for our stretch option for the Meathead category, you gotta look at Panerai. And here I'm looking at the Luminor Marina with the PAM 01312. So this watch is going to be on the larger end, but not even the largest for Panerai. But when I think of Panerai, I think of the Luminor, or at least one of the pillars of Panerai. It has to be included in the collection. It is going to be large on the wrist when you talk about those extended lugs on this case, north of 53 millimeters. But as I mentioned earlier, if you're talking about a recognizable silhouette, Panerai is certainly going to be owners of one of the most recognizable silhouettes in all of watchmaking. And the Luminor has to be included in that. It's a watch that I think has been unfortunately positioned as a larger watch. But Panerai, in terms of the modern watchmaking perspective, I think there's a lot to navigate still for Panerai. And even for myself, as someone with smaller wrists and preferences, I mean, I'm wearing a 34 millimeter watch on my wrist right now. I still find many Panerai watches somewhat appealing. Not some of the very overdone watches, not even this Luminor. I don't think it would ever be for me, but I think there's a ton of potential from the brand to broaden and kind of reimagine what the collection would be from a modern context. But I digress, and to get back on track, I think it's a perfect fit for this persona. Next up, we have the Hipster, and because we've already made a coffee joke, for affordable end, you have to look at the Brew Metric. So we have two tie-ins here. A more underground type of brand, even though I've been probably mentioning this watch quite a bit, and also it's been getting a lot of buzz as of late, but that's for good reason. This is a really cool looking watch. I think by the time at the end of this video, maybe by the time this video even comes out, it might be too well known for even a hipster to look in the direction of this thing, but still it is a really well done watch for under $400. When you're looking at entry-level chronographs, there's not many options. To look at one with its own kind of flair and unique design format, under $400, that's even more rare. So that's what makes, I think, this Brew Metric makes a lot of sense. It has a 36 millimeter case, also with a lug-to-lug dimension under 42 millimeters, and coming with a Mecha Quartz movement from Seiko that has that sweep effect to the second hand that kind of gives the best of both worlds. The sweep while also getting the quartz accuracy. And now for our stretch choice in the hipster category, we have Resonance with the Type 3 BB. So if you're not familiar with Resonance, a very interesting brand, and I would say probably one of the most creative pursuits of engineering and watchmaking in the last, honestly, I'd maybe even say 25 years. This brand, in terms of what they're doing, is totally reinventing how you can set your watch without a crown and also emulating kind of more wearable tech in the process. This 3BB version is going to be essentially all blacked out. It does have this indication display on the dial. It's gonna almost mirror a regulator type watch with that indication, but in addition to that, you're getting a running second indicator that isn't going to run every seconds, but every 6 minutes to let you know. And then also all of those indicators on the dial, the minute hand, the hourly display, all move around the dial as it is running. How is it running? Well, it has to be wound up through either wear or through manually winding the watch. But how do you manually wind this thing? You have to turn it around and wind the watch by twisting the case back by following the arrow instructions on the back. So this is its way of bypassing the use of a crown to be able to set the time. So all your setting of the hands and date, as well as winding the watch, can be handled on the back. And you look at the front of it and it almost has this pebble-like effect and a very vivid type of approach to how you can see all those indications on the dial. That is done through the use of around 35 milliliters of oil that is being applied to the front of the watch to create a perfect visual and unobstructed view from that sapphire crystal and domed effect. It's a crazy watch, and I'm in the process of doing a deep dive on this piece and the brand. So now next up we have the Hypebeast, and for the affordable category here, I want to look at the Seiko 5 SRPG 5.3 Rolling Blazers. So these Rolling Blazers additions and drops were some of the most hyped watches I've seen under $1,000 in the past couple of years, even seeing them trade over retail prices. These things took off just because I think they landed on that kind of hype lifestyle type of approach and wearability. I see like a street style type of individual loving these things, but at the core, they're pretty much Seiko 5s. And if you're familiar with any of these Seiko 5 sport models, you're going to be familiar with this. The affiliation with Rolling Blazers and the unique bezel design is what drove this one home. And if you're looking at a watch under $1,000 that had a crazy amount of spike in interest from this kind of category and collector, this has to be one that fits that mold, maybe better than any of them. And now for the stretch pick here, I struggled to decide on what is the most hyped of the hyped watches now in the world. You probably could say the Nautilus, but I decided to go with the Rolex Daytona reference 116500LN. Now these ceramic Daytona models have gone mad. People want them, and the secondary trading market values are out of this world. I don't necessarily condone buying these things at the trading values. These are not $40,000 to $50,000 watches at the end of the day. They're very nice watches. I actually do think they're some of the best contemporary watches that Rolex makes. But if you're talking about hyped and hyped, you gotta look at the Rolex Daytona. This and the Nautilus, probably the two most hyped watches in the world at the moment. They're right there with the Jumbo, maybe some Richard Mille models. They're all kind of in the same just category, and that's all I'm gonna say about this one, but that's my choice. Now the next category, we have the Stealth Wealth category. Now for both of these watches, they have to be in the luxury category just given the nature of this persona. And the first one I think is honestly perfect. I can't really think of a better choice, and that is with Moser's Swiss Help Watch, or better probably known as kind of their troll to the Apple Watch. So if you're not familiar with Moser, they're a Swiss independent watchmaker and have risen to heights really seen in the world of independent watchmaking. I would say they're probably a top 5 best known independent brand. And one thing I love about Moser is they don't take themselves too seriously, even though the watches that they make are very serious. Whether you're looking at some of their marketing and positioning, or the watches that they make, something like this is not a brand that is afraid to have some fun in the process of making something very serious. And don't let it be misunderstood. These are serious mechanical watches being produced. Inside here, you have a manual Moser HMC 324. Moser's movements and just reputation as a parts specialist are well regarded in the entire industry. This is going to have that Apple Watch silhouette, which I think is the #1 reason why it has to be included in this type of persona. It looks like an Apple Watch from afar, but as you get closer, or if you flip the watch around, you get a very different sense of what you're actually looking at. This is Stealth Wealth personified. And now for the second watch here, this is one that I have spoken about quite a bit. I am a huge fan of, and I think is also, when you're getting into this level of watchmaking, some of the most fun that you can have, and that is with JLC's Reverso Tribute duophase. There's not many watches that can wow people as they look closer at it. There's many watches that, sure, they might grab attention in an ostentatious manner, but this is not that type of watch. This is a watch when somebody might see it on your wrist and say, what is that? And then they take a closer look and they're like, wait, this is cooler than I anticipated. Watching people just be in awe of these watches when they look at it and then you flip it over and then there's an entire different watch, an experience on the other side. This is the best conversation starter in watchmaking, or at least one of the best conversation starters in watchmaking that you can find under $20,000. I love the JLC Reverso Tribute Duophase. I absolutely adore this watch and everything it represents. You have a variety of different styles to go for, but the standard Tribute model is going to be the cleanest and kind of having some reverence back to the original 1931 design. Now for our next category, we have I Got a Great Deal. And if you've purchased any Casio watch, you probably have said that at least once out loud, probably. And first watch here is the Casio Oak. So when these watches were released a couple years ago, they took the internet by storm, especially the watch community. People absolutely love these things. You have this combination between the DW5600 style case, so in other words, pretty wearable case, and then you had this approach to this octagonal design that felt like this high horology kind of taste in a resin approach that is, of course, very synonymous with the Casio G-Shock. That came together with this analog digital display to create a $110 proposition that people could not pass up. Now, is it the best value from Casio or G-Shock? No, but I think so many people are enamored with these watches, and for good reason. They're fun, unique, and come at an incredible price that, yeah, you're probably saying the same thing, that I got a great deal. And of course here we have to look at two affordable options. What's a perfect dichotomy with a robust watch like the Casio Oak? You gotta look at the Orient Bambino. Now this could be, of course, seen from a mile away, but you still can't overlook this watch. The Orient Bambino, variety of different versions and generations to this point, for around $150, give or take. I think you're gonna be pretty hard pressed to find a better dress watch for $150. I mean, we're talking about $150. Mechanical, in-house produced movements on the inside, variety of different dial styles to choose from over several different variations and generations, I should say. You have a 40.5mm case, which is more of the standard, pretty wearable lug to lug, but still going to have some presence with it. And then you also have these smaller mid-size versions that are also out there. The Orient Bambino, a gateway drug to the mechanical watch enthusiast, and for good reason. They're well done for $150. Yes, $150. Now for our next category, we have Stereotypically Rich. Doesn't really care about watches, just kind of walks in the store. How I'm imagining this is, I have some money to spend. I just want to get a watch that is classy. It is well done, so I'm not going for just the gaudy type of individual. This person still has taste, but they want to get something that's nice and they don't have to really think about it. Now, if I'm thinking about from a luxury perspective, because they have money to spend, there's got to be two tiers. And the first tier I want to look at is the Rolex Datejust. Now, when I think of the Rolex Datejust, it's a great first luxury watch. And I don't want to say it's a bland choice because I've owned several Datejusts. I love the Datejust. I'm a huge fan of what it presents. I love the fluted bezel. I love the Jubilee bracelet. Jubilee is absolutely the way to go for the Datejust. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I think it's absolutely the way to go. But it pretty much predates every sports model from Rolex. It predates the Explorer by a full decade, the Submariner by a full decade, GMT Master by a full decade, and is one of the most iconic watches of all time. But with all of the attention now being directed towards the sports category of Rolex, it's almost like people forgot how great of a watch the Rolex Datejust is, and that's kind of a shame. The fluted bezel does have a bit more of a pop to it now, especially when looking at modern references versus some of the vintage references that I think are a tad more subdued. But this is the first watch I can think of when looking in the direction of an individual of this type. Now, what's the Rolex Datejust equivalent to the high horology category? And for that, I think I am going to say the Patek Calatrava. Now, to say that the Patek Calatrava is the same as a Rolex Datejust is not what I'm trying to say, but I would say that somebody that has the money to spend and is looking for a safe, classy choice for that money, the Patek Calatrava makes the most amount of sense you can find. It is a dress watch that, like the Datejust, I think has fallen victim to the success of some other lines within the catalog from the brand in which it represents. You can look at the Aquanaut and look at the Nautilus, and sometimes you forget, maybe you have some grand complications and some other chronographs from Patek that also are going to overshadow it. That original entry door to the brand sometimes can be neglected. So that would be my choice as the second option here for this category. The next category, we have the Student. And the first watch here is the Casio A168. I think of many Casios in this affordable range under say $30 or so, but this is one of them that kind of always jumps out. It has a tad more presence than the Casio F91W, and I also just like the look of it a tad more. Has some useful functions with the backlight, getting a stopwatch, alarm settings, and for $25, you can't argue those prices when you're on a student budget. Now for a little bit more of a stretch type of goal for the student category, and I think this is a perfect first mechanical Swiss watch to own, and that is with the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical. The reason why I like this watch so much for this category is for two reasons. One, you're getting the history and pedigree that comes with the Hamilton Khaki Field collection, but number two, it falls in a price range and in a level of versatility that I think it could have you covered pretty much through your entire college career or academic career, and then moving into that new professional life. It could look great no matter what background or type of business you're getting into, whether you're more hands-on or you're maybe in an office environment. I don't think it matters. You can dress this thing up, you can dress it down. It's never going to look out of place. It has a classic utility and design style that has standed the test of time and personified an era and generation when field watches were becoming popularized during World War I and World War II. This design style, whether you're looking back to World War II or looking at it from 2022 perspective, it still works. Simple as that. Now for our final category, we have the Watch Media Pro. Talking blogger, writer, photographer, media, YouTube, all those different types of individuals. Let's try to get them all condensed into one stereotypical choice. And for that, I think you have to look at some type of vintage Rolex model, probably a vintage Rolex Submariner, preferably a 5512, 5513, maybe a 1680, maybe a red sub, and also included with those box and papers, a well-documented service history, maybe some nice creamy faded tritium patina on the dial, maybe a tropical dial at that, and most likely bought borderline irresponsibly, but at least they have something cool to photograph for Instagram. So that is the upside of having that. Maybe I'm speaking slightly from experience. Maybe not with that specific model, but I have certainly been there thinking about the content more than the financial responsibility. That is part of being in the watch media, absolutely. All right guys, now that is my video looking at watches for different types of personalities and just general types of people. Now, of course, this was all in good fun, so I hope you had fun because I did. And this was a nice change in direction for me. I like having a little bit more fun and not being as serious for once. So what persona are you? Who are you? What type of collector are you? Do any of these categories fit you? Is there another one that I missed? Should we do another one of these? I'd love to see comments down below. Also, how accurate were my choices? You can also leave a comment about that. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Definitely check out TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the new products that we carry, and a growing pre-owned section. If you're looking to buy a watch or sell a watch, definitely consider TeddyBaldassarre.com. All right, guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.